Your firm, of course, assists clients in the procurement of copyrights, patents, trademarks in China. From your estimation, has the needle changed at all in those regards due to the increased pressure the trade war has put on Chinese policymakers?
Well, it's a question of time. If you ask me over time, the needle's moved a lot. Has the needle moved in the last year or so? Actually, that's kind of hard to answer because China has consistently been making progress over the last 40 years, right? And it's in that sense, since I've seen progress personally over 30 years, I'd have to say that I haven't seen a whole lot of change in the last year, really. But I believe that there is consistent progress. China's always had, as soon as it finishes one draft of one of the intellectual property laws, patent, trademark, whatever, it starts pretty quickly with another draft. And my sense is that maybe they're pushing some of these things forward a little more because of the trade talks, but they usually have some drafts in their arsenal to get moving with.
Do you feel, though, that this trade war perhaps is going to be the impetus that China needs to push forward many of the reforms that not only China says it needs to do, but has been resistant so far because of various other domestic concerns, but what the international community and access to China, they want?
Well, I don't really feel that this so-called trade war is going to make a huge difference in how there are such structural differences. There's so many similarities, right, in terms of the markets, but there's such structural differences in the markets between China and the U.S. I don't think I am optimistic that a deal will be made. I mean, sometimes, as we know, the most bitter feuds are those between members of a family, right? And I think that the economic ties between China and the U.S. really amount to something like that. I mean, they really cannot break these bonds. But unfortunately, some of the language, when it gets to be political like this, some of the language can be very unfortunate. The word forced has been used quite a bit. The U.S. is forced. And there is a sense in which American companies really feel they are forced into this relationship or forced to make some technology transfers. But I think we have to break down that word. And I'd like to give 5 quick examples, and the first being, I'll lump trade secrets and joint ventures together. Now, it is true that in order to get payments remitted out of China, for example, the government has to approve those remittances, so contracts have to be shown. So something of value, some kind of transfer of value must be shown. In order to get a joint venture approved, for example, the government has to approve. It's not like the U.S., a lot of U.S. states where you can just register a company. You have to actually get permission from the government because China's economy is structured in a way that almost everything has to be approved by the government first. So in that sense, yes, there's some element of force because there's some element of review. However, nobody's really forcing, the government's not forcing Western parties to transfer trade secrets. In a lot of cases, first of all, joint ventures, generally speaking, will license technology from their Western partner. It's not usually outright sold and assigned. It might be in some situations, but that's not forced. That's not forced in the legal sense, right? Same thing with trade secrets. Right. Usually a Western company will keep hold of their trade secrets, and often what they'll do is they'll try and formulate or assemble the trade secret portion abroad and then bring that part into China for final assembly and other products. So in that sense, there's no legal force. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about this foreign investment law that was laid out. And there's people say it's a step in the right direction, but it just doesn't go far enough. In terms of the clients that you deal with, what's their take on that? Are they going to have to come up with new contracts with some of their domestic partners now?
No, I don't think so. The foreign investment law really is just part of a sort of a general, continual restructuring and simplification of laws in China, just as they're simplifying a lot of the administration in China. They're bringing a lot of cities together, making larger economic units. So they've taken 3 of the old investment laws and put them together in one new foreign direct investment law, which restates the basic principle that intellectual property of foreign investors will be protected. However, that doesn't change anything. There never was a law that said that intellectual property of foreign investors wouldn't be protected. The protection's always been a question at the level of bureaucratic discretion. That's always been the problem in terms of enforcement or granting of rights. It's always been the level of discretion, and that will continue to be the case. So if I may, to go quickly to the last couple of examples, in the trademark example, for example, a lot of companies feel they are forced to get into the Chinese market. But again, that's not a legal force. that's compelling them. Chinese trademark law really doesn't differ much. It differs significantly from the U.S. and Canada, but it doesn't differ much from the rest of the world. Most of the rest of the world doesn't create trademark rights until there is registration with the sovereign state, and that's the same in China. So what happens, unfortunately, for American companies is that because Chinese companies have so much manufacturing capacity and they've already built out those export networks, they are ready to go to create products, and they want to create them in a way that's going to sell the best. And so they tend to free ride by they get online, they look and see what's just been registered at the USPTO and not registered in China, and they go for it. Yes.
Yeah, Laura, the next 30 years is going to be about services. The economy is more about services, high-tech manufacturing. Is there anything in the new foreign investment law that protects that type of future FDI that's about to come into China?
Services are mentioned, but as I say, it's a very general protection, and that's not really the place to look. The important point is going to be how government bureaucratic discretion is exercised in granting approvals to Western investments in China. That's really the important point. That's really what the Americans want, and yet that's the kind of thing that is so difficult to work out in a trade deal, because there's no way for the way that the Chinese government and economy is structured, they're just not going to give up. There's no way they could just give up that discretion and just say, well, whatever Western companies want to do, they can do, right? That's not going to happen. So what can be? The United States, I gather, is looking at trying to put in some kind of punishment penalty mechanism, and that doesn't seem like something that a sovereign state is going to go for either. So it's hard to know exactly what they're doing behind the scenes, but I take it as a good sign that we're not hearing much. Because the fact that we're not hearing much about it means that both sides want to keep the public pressure off and try and really allow the negotiators, who I think we can all believe are going to use their best faith,
Laura?
Their best intentions to do the best for their country. They're going to try and work something out that's acceptable to both sides. Of course, whatever they work out that's acceptable to the other side is not going to be enough for the hardline hawks on both governments. But I do hope that they can work something out, because it has been very difficult for Western companies who are going to suffer from this.